do it. So Bettina, we have 1 minute till 12 o'clock if you want to get started then.
All right, do you want to give me a signal?
Sure.
You want me to just start at 12?
Pardon?
You want me to just start at 12?
Sure, yeah, that'd be great.
Or wave your hand, how about that? Hello and welcome to the Equestrian Canada Equest National Health and Welfare Call. This call takes place monthly and is open to anyone in the horse industry. The call was developed to increase information sharing within the horse industry in Canada on all topics related to health and welfare. Please note that the call is recorded and will be posted on EC's website along with previous calls. Links related to the call can also be found in the same location. We have muted all lines to avoid background noise. So questions for our speakers were submitted by email in advance and have been presented to the subject matter experts for response. My name is Dr. Bettina Bobsey. We have a highly informative lineup of speakers today to help educate us about the COVID-19 implications for our equine-focused activities and businesses. One of the current challenges with restrictions in place for social distancing and reducing barn staffing is how can we ensure that the care our horses get meets the standards set by the Canadian Equine Code of Practice. Fortunately, we have a code of practice to refer to in a time like this. The Farmed Animal Codes of Practice are science and consensus-based documents used in Canada by livestock owners for education and by animal welfare agencies for enforcement. The term consensus means the standards in the code were written by and agreed to by a broad base of Canadian horse experts from all sectors of the equine industry. So that means the basic standards for equine welfare apply across the board, whether you have retirees in your backyard or top performance horses. One area of particular concern in light of the COVID-19 situation is the requirement for provision of turnout or exercise. The code definitions of turnout and exercise are as follows. Quote, turnout means allowing horses free time, i.e. not under controlled exercise in a dry lot, arena, pen, or pasture. Turnout does not necessarily mean the horse is grazing. Exercise refers to physical activities, indoor or out, and includes, but is not limited to, walking in hand, riding, lunging, and hand grazing. The quote code requirement, and that's the one that's used by animal welfare agencies, that's the minimum standard, says horses must have some form of exercise or turnout unless under stall arrest for medical reasons. The need for daily turnout or exercise will be obvious to all educated and experienced horse managers. It's important for digestive health, circulation, and mental well-being. So it's important that regardless of reduced equine activities, our horses should still get the turnout or exercise they need to maintain good health. It does not mean that they need to be in training at this time. If there are special medical concerns that arise around the need for exercise, please consult your veterinarian for advice so they can work with you and the barn management to find a solution to meet the horse's needs while maintaining appropriate biosecurity and social distancing at the facility. At this point, I would like to go ahead and introduce our speakers. Our first speaker today is Christy House. Christy is the EC Manager of Welfare and Industry, and she's going to give us an update on current EC programming.
Thank you, Bettina. I'll just confirm that you can see my screen okay?
I see your screen. Go ahead, Christy.
Perfect. So In order to not try to take up too much time from the other experts, I'm just going to give a quick review of where information is located within EC. So if you are to go to our website, and specifically under the news category, we do have a variety of resources that are being updated as changes are made, as well as new information becomes available. So within there, you can find our overall statement related to COVID-19, as well as support and resources for farms and equestrian facilities related to the advocacy work and information and resources we're trying to collect in order to help resources or facilities navigate these times. And we will be expanding the resources that are available on the website as we progress through this. So far to date, we have worked on a variety of advocacy efforts on behalf of the community. We have been in touch with some of our federal and provincial legislators, as well as some of our larger agriculture lending institutes. There's a full resource available on all the advocacy work that has been done on the website under our support and resources for equine farms and equestrian facilities. And we are hoping to continue with these conversations and continue to advocate on behalf of our horse farm owners and facility managers in Canada. So some more resources have been updated under that section specific to the Farm Credit Canada announcement that's been made through the federal government. We've also provided resources in terms of how to interact and the resources that Farm Credit Canada does have for farms to help them navigate through applying for assistance with FCC. We also have a variety of links from the federal government in terms of small business and unemployment resources and other agricultural lending institutes. In terms of next steps, we will be working on releasing a survey that is related to collecting information based on the current financial crises some of our equine facilities are facing. This information is vital in order for us to develop a needs-based advocacy plan for the farms and facilities to the federal and provincial governments. We are expecting to have that out late today or early tomorrow, and we will be trying to broadcast it as widely as possible. So we encourage you to look out for that survey, and if you do have the time to participate in it, that information is vital in order for us to develop the accurate resources information needed to assist you in these times. We do have a resource available as well as for recommendations around biosecurity. You may have seen this infographic floating around. I think it's important that we all recognize that we have to be collaborative and flexible, but most importantly, empathetic during these times. We're all facing stress situations that are out of our normal routine, and it's imperative that we are providing the safety that's required for society as a whole, but also our equine primary caregivers. I can say that I am very compassionate for the situation that everybody is in. I am a horse owner. I have also been a facility manager, and I do understand that we all have our individual circumstances and our individual relationships. It is important that you rely on your industry professionals, veterinarians included, to help come up with interim measures that can help us navigate what is not seen to be as our normal routine and get us all back in the barn and to our regular routines as soon as possible by doing our social responsibility within these times. So that's all I have for now. If anybody does have any questions, concerns, we do have a portal set up on the website within the resource document for facilities where you can submit your questions and concerns. And we will be continuing to communicate with you as frequently as possible. You can also reach me by email at khouse@equestrian.ca at any time, and I will do my best to get back to you in a timely fashion. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Christy. I really appreciate how much you're getting done in this situation, and your efforts are most appreciated. Our next speaker is Dr. Rebecca Steen, family physician who works in the Hamilton, Ontario COVID-19 Assessment Center. Go ahead, Rebecca. Rebecca, you're on mute.
I'm unmuted. Hello.
There you are. Hello.
Hi, thank you very much. So firstly, I'd like to say hello to my fellow equine enthusiasts. These are unprecedented times. But before I move into the serious matter of discussing COVID-19 from the medical and public health perspective, I thought I should first introduce myself. My name is Rebecca Steen. I'm a family physician in Hamilton, Ontario, and have been in practice for 17 years. I have a community family practice. I'm an assistant clinical professor adjunct at McMaster University in the Department of Family Medicine and medical care at St. Joseph's Hamilton. I am also one of the physicians who will be working at COVID-19 assessment clinics. I am an avid equestrian who owns 3 horses, 2 retired, as I never sell them, and I call myself a collector for this reason. In the winter, my horse shows in Ocala, Florida, and in the summer, they compete in Ontario. As a horse owner, I am aware of the regulations placed on the equine industry due to COVID-19. I am currently in self-isolation. As I returned from Ocala, Florida on March 12th. For my family practice, I'm currently seeing patients through virtual visits and phone calls. I'm connecting with my colleagues for important meetings regarding pandemic planning through conference calls. There are many of these calls and strings of emails planning COVID-19, the situation evolves. Today, my goal is to provide you with information regarding COVID-19 and the important recommendations from public health that aim to flatten the curve. So it's important to understand what it means to flatten the curve. To flatten the curve means to decrease the rate of spread of a virus so that less people are sick with the virus at any given time. Overall, this does not necessarily mean that less people will eventually become infected with COVID-19, but less people will be infected at any given time. This is vital so that our healthcare system is not overwhelmed and we can provide to patients. If infection rate in the population rises quickly, the medical system becomes overwhelmed and more people have complications and die from COVID-19. This is occurring in Italy right now. They do not have enough ventilators for the patients that need them. Flattening the curve also allows time for research into treatments, and most importantly, the development of a COVID-19 vaccine. It is estimated that 30 to 70% of the population will eventually be infected with COVID-19. This is a broad estimate because COVID-19 is a completely new virus, so it has never been researched. We are learning in real time. There are about 38 million Canadians. So with a conservative estimate of a 30% infection rate, that means that 11.3 million Canadians will become infected. But if the infection rate is at the higher end, at the 70%, that number is 25.9 million Canadians. For 80% of people who contract COVID-19 will have mild, but for 20%, they will have significant illness and need medical care. This would at a low estimate that 2.26 million Canadians, and at a high estimate, 5.26 million Canadians would have significant illness from the disease and require medical care. The mortality rate from COVID-19 is also estimated to be approximately 3 to 4%. Those over 65 years of age, not that old when you really think about it, think of who you know that is over the age of 65. And those with medical conditions, immunosuppression, your friend who's on chemotherapy, their cancer may be curable, but they could die from COVID-19. Or those with pre-existing medical conditions, such as asthma, heart disease, and diabetes, are at greatest risk of complications and death. Think of whom you know who has a pre-existing medical condition. As of 11:20 a.m. today, when I last checked the Ontario website, we have 671 reported cases of COVID-19 in our province. However, there's 10,489 swabs still pending, and we have had 9 deaths. 1 yesterday in Hamilton, where I work. In Canada, we have 2,792 reported cases of COVID-19 and 27 deaths. We are only at the beginning. The numbers will continue to rise. In the US, they have over 55,000 reported cases and over 800 deaths. They have not flattened the curve. Remember, the medical system isn't just looking after you. We still have all of the other patients to care for. Maybe your groom who is looking after your horse while the barn is closed for COVID get kicked, needs emergency medical care. We need to be able to respond to those situations too. So the important steps for you to do to help flatten the curve so that the healthcare system is able to respond. The first thing is it is absolutely essential to self-isolate. If you have returned from travel, you need to self-isolate for 14 days on your return, stay home, and avoid contacts with others. If you develop symptoms while in self-isolation, you should be assessed for COVID-19. Public Health Ontario website has excellent information on COVID-19 and how to self-isolate. That is at www.publichealthontario.ca. The second measure people absolutely need to take is social and physical distancing and decreasing your, what I call, footprint. This cannot be stressed enough. This means limiting close contacts to only those people who reside in your home. Only go out for essentials such as groceries, medical appointments that are necessary. Otherwise, stay home. If you go out, follow the 6-foot rule. Think that the other person has to be about a half a canter stride away from you. If you are an essential worker and need to go to work, still practice the 6-foot rule with fellow workers. Important things to note, things like having friends over for dinner or coffee is not considered distancing. Going for a walk outside is acceptable, but you still need to follow the 6-foot rule. The third and important measure is hand hygiene. Wash your hands or sanitize your hands frequently. For hand washing, that's with soap and water for 20 seconds. And always make sure when you re-enter your house, if you've gone out for something like groceries, that you wash your hands immediately on your return. The other point about hand hygiene is be mindful about not touching your face. If you have touched a contaminated surface and then your face, that is one way that you can then bring the virus to you and infect yourself. So tomorrow I return to work, and my first, I will be working a shift at the COVID assessment clinic where we will see over 100 patient testing. We need to test so we can properly self-quarantine those who have COVID-19 and perform contact tracing so that those people can self-isolate and mitigate the spread. If you were to test positive for COVID-19 and had to tell public health how many close contacts you had in the last 14 days, how many people would you need to name? If you are helping to flatten the curve, you should be keeping the list short. I personally have not seen my horses since their return from Ocala, Florida. Farms are keeping me updated with pictures. I have to leave their care to I have trusted to look after them. Riding and horses are my therapy and stress relief from work. Believe me, my level of stress right now is at a maximum, and I'm unable to ride and see my 4-legged family in person. This is what I need to do for my family, friends, patients, Canadians, and citizens of the world. This is a global pandemic. It is a global health emergency, and we need to do our part to flatten the curve. Thanks.
Thank you very much for that, Dr. Steen. I think you've hit the high points for horse owners who rely on their horses for much more than just riding and physical exercise, but that doesn't trump social responsibility. And I think you've presented that very well in a manner that all of us can understand. And thank you very much for what you're doing. Our next speaker is Dr. Amy Greer from the University of Guelph. She's going to speak on equine facility operation continuity planning, a review of best practices, biosecurity, resources, and more. Dr. Greer, please go ahead.
Hi, thank you very much. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
I think I'm unmuted. Perfect. So thank you very much for the invitation. My name is Amy Greer. I'm a Canada Research Chair in Population Disease Modeling at the University of Guelph. Some of you might know me because you may have participated in research studies that my team has been involved with, specifically looking at biosecurity related questions in the equine industry. But what some people who I know through the horse world might not know is that I have been actively involved in pandemic planning and preparedness within the Canadian government since before H1N1 in 2009. And so I want to talk a little bit about the things that we can do within the industry, specifically focusing on things related to what I'm going to call incident management structure. And so, oh, it looks like Christy has put up my slides. I could do that, Christy, if you want, or you can go through them, I guess, that's fine.
You just want to let me know when to change slides. I'm happy to.
Okay, sure. Yeah, if you go to the next slide. So I wanted to just build on Rebecca's really fantastic discussion about COVID-19. And I wanted to show you a graph, which I know is kind of maybe super scientisty of me, but I think it really drives home the point here. And this is work that is hot off the press, some work that we've been doing in collaboration with the provinces and territories, specifically looking at flattening the curve. What does that really mean? And so what you can see in these graphs is that this dark black dotted line is the existing ICU capacity in the province of Ontario. If we do not act in a way that permits us to control those cases of COVID-19 from coming at us very fast and furious, what we end up with is this green curve. And you can see that it very quickly overwhelms the ICU capacity within the province of Ontario. And that's a really scary thing to see. And what you can see in the next figure where we kind of zoom in is that if we implement social distancing measures, we have a much better chance of keeping the case counts within a level that our ICU capacity is going to be able to manage. And so just to really drive home the point that we really are at what my colleagues in Korea are calling the golden time. This is the time at which we have the opportunity to make decisions and choices that are either going to help to protect our healthcare workers and our healthcare infrastructure, or alternatively, the point in time where if compliance is low, we will pass the point of no return. And so it is really critical for us to be very cognizant of where we are and what we're doing. So if you move to the next slide, Christy, I've talked about this from the perspective of an incident management system approach, specifically related to agriculture. I think that thinking about this, for those of you who have heard this word before, and some of you may not have, but it's really thinking about a plan for preparedness for ongoing disruption. And right now, during this current global pandemic, we certainly are seeing disruption. We recognize that that disruption may exist for some extended period of time, but it's also important for us to think about the fact that having these plans now and really being intentional about them can help us to be prepared for many other challenges that we might face in the future. It's really an investment, if we haven't done it yet, to really think about other things that might influence equine facilities, things like fires or floods or ice storms. Planning is really never out of style. It's something that we should always be cognizant of. And hopefully maybe some of the suggestions that I'm going to mention today are things that you haven't thought of before, but I think are worth thinking about now. So Christy, if you move to the next slide, thank you. So certainly it is important for us to have contingency plans. Oftentimes that is related to extra supplies. We often think about, you know, hay, feed, medication, those sorts of things. If the supply chain becomes delayed, and we actually, there are estimates which suggest that at any given point in time, if we are seeing active transmission in the community, which we are seeing within Canada now, the supply chain may become slower. And that's not that things will no longer be available, but it's that people who do deliveries, people who we rely on, are also going to be industries that are seeing high absenteeism. And so we should be aware of the fact that we need to think proactively about making sure we have enough supplies on hand, that if we see a slowdown in the deliveries or things that we need, that we have enough on hand to be able to get us through. Also thinking about centralized emergency contact information. So if people were to become ill, do you have a system in place whereby individuals know who to contact? Where are the phone numbers stored? Does everybody have access to them? Can you have things and systems in place which allow us to do that? And certainly that's an important step if we want to think about having people coming on or off property in the case of emergencies, for instance, farriers or vets. Being able to get in touch with people is important. It's also important for us to cross-train staff. And what I mean by that is that, again, if we are assuming we are going to see high absenteeism, even if we have a small number of critical staff who are maintaining our daily routine at the barn, making sure that everybody who is on site knows how to do all of the different jobs. Because if somebody all of a sudden becomes ill and is not able to be in, you need to make sure that those jobs are still covered off. We still have to deliver the same level of quality care to all of the horses that we're looking after. And so making sure that the staff are able to cover off in the case of high absenteeism. And again, resource management and logistics, having a process by which veterinarians, suppliers, farriers know how to get in touch with you if they need to come on site. What is the process? What is the protocol for doing that? So again, really thinking proactively about your contingency plan moving forward is going to be important. So on the next slide, the next part here is really about staff infection control. And often we talk a lot about equine biosecurity, but right now, while we're also always thinking about biosecurity, we really need to be thinking about in-facility staff infection control for COVID-19. And that means primarily working with the minimum number of human people on site to be able to deliver that quality care, keeping distance from one another while we are delivering the services that we need to do in terms of feed and turnout. One of the things that we see done in hospital infection control, which in ag we don't typically do a lot of, but is really something that could be very helpful, is to think about minimal staffing needs and then think about cohorting staff such that if you have a larger facility, for instance, and you have 4 people who are working, pair people up into groups of 2, keep distance. So, you know, work down opposite sides of the aisle, for instance, keeping that distance, but making sure that your staff are only coming in contact with the bare minimum number of other people who are on site by cohorting them. So that if somebody did become ill, again, who did they come in contact with when they were on site? You want to minimize that number to the very best of your ability. The third point here is that we know that certain individuals are at much higher risk of developing severe disease. And by severe disease, I mean disease requiring hospital care, ICU admission, and or mechanical ventilation. And so those high-risk individuals are people who, as Dr. Steen has said, are individuals who have asthma, COPD, history of stroke, heart conditions, cancer, people who have chronic underlying conditions. You may not even know if some of your staff have chronic underlying conditions. Many conditions are invisible and would not directly impact a person in day-to-day activities. But high-risk individuals are a concern for us because we need to protect them to the very best of our ability. And so we should really think about making sure that people have the ability to self-declare if they so choose, because we don't want those people to be having contact with people who could be infected with COVID-19. We really need to drive home the fact about staying home if you're experiencing any sort of respiratory symptom. That is really important. It comes back to this idea of cross-training so that if people need to be away from the barn, which is key for protecting all of the other critical staff who need to be there, they need to stay home, and you need to have staff who can cover off those requirements. I also think it is critical for us to always consider now, especially that community transmission is actively occurring. Assume that you or your staff could be infected. We know that individuals are able to transmit this virus before they are clinically ill, or they may have very minimal symptoms and they are still infectious to others. We know that community transmission is actively occurring. If you think about the case counts, and we've seen the case counts increase quite rapidly over the last couple of days, what we see in the data and what we see reported on the news is really an indication of an infection that started several weeks prior. And so we do not typically think like that. And it's important for us to consider the fact that our role in social distancing right now will not start to have an impact for several weeks down the line. What we see now is really a function of historical infections. Right now, what we're doing is trying to reduce infections that are happening now so that they do not happen, 2 weeks from now or a week from now. So if you go to the next slide there, Christy. Oh, darn. So there is an extra slide that I added in. That's okay. I'll start here and then go back to the other slide. What I do think is important for us to think about right now, as somebody who is actively involved at the federal level in terms of pandemic response right now, is that it is entirely possible that we could see a shelter-in-place order. And what that would mean would be that, again, individuals are going to be asked to stay at home, except for, medical needs or grocery needs, or the bare minimum needs outside of their home. And so we should all be actively thinking right now, whether we're in the equine industry or we're just thinking about our families, we really need to think about, could we manage that right now? And if not, what else do we need to put in place? Because if that were to happen, we want to make sure that we have all of our ducks in a row to be able to make that work. I'm going to also mention, which is not on my slides here because Melanie sent them to me kind of right before our call, is that if you go to www.oahn.ca/resources, so the Owen Network has a number of really useful resources for equine facilities. There's, and these have been developed in collaboration with the Health and Welfare Committee and Dr. Alison Moore at OMAFRA, specifically thinking about farriers who are going to be needing to come on or off site, as well as some documentation around caring for your horse during a pandemic, specifically thinking about all of the needs that exist and how we're going to make that happen to the best of our ability. And so those resources are available online. They're great kind of one-pagers. They have really good information, the best available information we have at this point in time. And so people should be directing themselves to the Owen Network website and taking a look and making themselves familiar with those resources as well. With that, I'll pass it back to Bettina.
Thank you very much for that. That was, I think your graph, you called them academic. I think they've really driven home the message of ICU capacity, which I think a lot of people may not understand. That was also a great introduction of the incident management system that is going to be a useful resource and way to think going forward to our next national disaster. Our next speaker is Dr. Melanie Barham, and she is going to talk about an overview of business continuity planning, including steps to developing a business continuity plan, best practices, financial steps, resources, and more. Go ahead, Dr. Barham.
Okay, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. All right, so I'm going to share my screen here so you guys can take a look at the slides. They're very basic slides, nothing too fancy. We're going to go through this. Let me just get into presentation mode. Okay, so the first thing that you should do if you are an equine business owner or any kind of business owner is to gather your expenses and pop them into a spreadsheet. I'm going to go through this because fairly rapidly because it's going to be the Coles Notes version of kind of what to do for a business continuity plan. You can also Google business continuity plan or pandemic planning, and there are some great templates. Like the first three that popped up for me were very, very good templates, and I can forward them on to Christy as well to post if people would like them. But the first step is really to get real about where your expenses and your income is so that you can get a good picture of this. If you work with QuickBooks or if you have another accounting software that you use, this should be not too hard to pull together for you. And the best practices are to put it into fixed expenses, so things that don't change, your mortgage or your leases that you might have to pay on equipment or on farming equipment, that kind of thing, or vehicles. And then also your variable expenses, so staffing costs, feed, and that kind of thing. So gather those up. And then gather your income and what you have typically made at this period of time and what you made in the past 30 days and put them into your spreadsheet as well so that you can get an idea of what your profit margin might be in your business. I would also highly recommend, based on speaking with Christy about looking at and speaking with some colleagues in the United States about what they're doing with financial aid for businesses and what might be ahead for us, to gather your tax returns from the past couple of years and ensure that you have them as well as any kind of paper trail for your income and your expenses that you might have had. Put them into a binder or somewhere where you can keep them on hand so that you can provide them when we get loan packages and when we get things organized and when there's more information available. But this is a great exercise just so that you are aware of where you are at exactly right now. The next thing you want to do is make a couple of scenarios. So go forward and look at what would happen, how much margin would you have if you had, how much savings or how much cash in hand would you have if you had a 50% reduction, a 75% reduction, and a 100% reduction in your current income. These are the recommendations from several financial analysts, and I think it's an easy way to sort of go through, and it's a simple forecasting exercise so that you can see where your business might be and how much margin you might have. The next thing that you want to do is not panic, because that's going to be obviously for most businesses a pretty hard thing to look at. But you want to look at, okay, so if I was going to increase my cash flow and my cash in hand to be able to provide care to the animals that are in my barn and also be able to care for my own family. You can increase the ways that you can increase cash flow would be increasing revenue from other profit centers. So from your current profit centers, so being able to maybe increase training rides if you're a professional barn or if you're able to provide training rides. Decreasing your expenses, so potentially you might be able to cut out purchases that you might have been going through with, but you could stop those purchases right now. Delaying expenses. Right now, it's definitely worthwhile getting on the phone with your lenders and talking to them and seeing if there's a way to make part payment, to skip a payment, any way that you can, particularly if you notice that you really don't have a lot of margin or a lot of wiggle room. Other things would be to get some of your assets into liquidity. So finding a way to get things so that you have cash in hand. So if you have some stocks and bonds that you can personally sell or something like that, that you can inject cash into your business, or if you have some things like a tractor that you were planning to sell this year, potentially this may be, although it's a tricky time to sell items at the moment because everyone is staying at home, it's possible that you can get some things into liquidity. Other ways would be to get a loan, which is something that Christy mentioned, or using some personal money to pop into your business to be able to keep things afloat. Certainly these are not ideal situations, but these are the typical ways that we would look at to increase cash flow. And the other thing that we're going to talk a little bit about is new profit centers, new ways that you could serve your clients and create some income for to keep things going. I would encourage you to take a scientific approach to changes. So if you're working in Excel or you're working on a piece of paper, make one change, then note the change to the income, and then click Save As, so that you're not making a bazillion changes and you can't backtrack to see where you were at. The other thing that this allows you to do is it allows you to see which changes will be the best bang for your buck. The answer might be to do a lot of little things, like it might be to skip one mortgage payment if your bank allows you to. It might be to cut the amount of, or to delay a payment or delay a purchase that you were planning on doing. But it also might be one big thing. So it just depends on what your business is based on. But I would encourage you to do it one thing at a time so that you can really see what the value of that is. And take a second to note it, to think about that. And before you make a drastic change, say, for example, we've seen in the US a lot of people getting laid off. Before you make a drastic change, I'd encourage you to take some next steps, which would be to brainstorm some different ideas before you make a big drastic change. So sleep on it if you can, or take a bit of time and talk it over with a business advisor or with somebody who you're potentially your banker or a colleague that you might be working with. This is also a really useful time to connect with your clients and your staff. I think that transparency in this time is helpful in sharing information that you feel comfortable sharing, so that everyone is aware, particularly your staff, that that you're working your hardest to keep them on, and you're doing everything that you can do to get your business as solvent and as afloat as possible, but you're all working together. Your staff may have some really great ideas that you may not have thought of. We were on a call, I delivered the same talk in an extended version to veterinarians on Monday night, and some of the vets said that their staff had come up with some incredible ideas that they're trying out that they would have never thought of. And their staff, who were more tech savvy than the veterinarians, were able to offer things that the business owner hadn't thought of. So it can be really helpful to be upfront with them and to share information about, yeah, you know what, we're all worried, and I am stressed out, but I'm really working hard to make sure that everyone is well taken care of and that I'm doing my very best for you. Honesty and empathy, I think, in this time, as Christy had mentioned, is so important. And connecting with your clients too, to see what they need at this time. It depends on what kind of business you run, what your clients' needs are, and what they look to you for. So the next kind of step that you can take is looking at the relationship that you have with your clients right now. So what role do you fill for them? If you're a riding instructor, your role is going to be very different than somebody who organizes clinics for a living versus somebody who's potentially a feed supplier. But looking at what your clients actually need from you right now, and how you can help fill that need. We all have to look differently at how we're delivering businesses and how we're delivering that value to our clients with the new constraints that we have. So how can you pivot your business to be under those new constraints? we're always under constraints, no matter what, like whether that's show season is coming or a horse is lame or a sale didn't pan out. We're always under constraints. It's just that these are much more difficult and a bit more challenging, and it really will require us to think of things in a different way than we did before. So the other question that I would have for you and for your staff is what ideas and hidden talents do your staff have, or do you have? Perhaps you've been sitting on an idea that you haven't had the courage to potentially bring forward, offering online riding lessons, something else, something that you might have wanted to do for a long time, but you haven't had the time to do it, or you haven't had the time to think about it. So if you're sitting around, if you're thinking about, oh my gosh, like I'm panicking about this situation, great time to get your finances in order, update some things on your business. Another tip that I've heard, and I really do believe this too, is that if you have some time and you're not, instead of taking that time and panicking and scrolling through social media endlessly, we take the time to build our businesses so that they're stronger when we come back. So if you don't have a website or you have a crummy website, it's a great time to update it. If you don't have your business practices in order, super time to do that. Another person brought up this morning a question to me about caring for horses if you're, as a contingency plan, caring for horses while you're not well. It's a great time to make sure that you have a will and a power of attorney as well. Just as an aside, this has nothing to do with building your business per se, but it's a good thing to check off your list and ensure you have done. If you're looking for things to do instead of panicking about where things are at. Having some discussions with your staff and your clients about where they're at and checking in with them, it can be really helpful, and it can lead to some new ideas. So here's an example taking us through this idea of building value for your clients. So if I'm a boarding barn, and at my particular boarding barn, I feel that my value that I bring is that I create a great place for people to come and relax with their horses. My client needs are probably something along the lines of seeing their horses, relaxing together perhaps, but potentially they enjoy the interaction with other clients, or being outdoors is a big thing for them. Depends on what your boarding scenario is. But some ideas that have come up that I've seen pop up in the past little while have been, Facebook Live with the horses before turnout, so they can still fulfill that need of seeing their horse. Virtual watch parties, or Netflix also has this really cool thing where you can watch movies together as a group. So potentially these are things that you can do together, or if you're trying to fulfill that need of creating a social environment for a group. So really looking at what your role and your value is that you bring to your clients, and what your clients actually need right now. And your clients can also, they will probably be happy to tell you what they need from you, and what kind of stress they're under, and what things might bring them value. Another example would be if you're a clinic organizer, your role is to bring people together with really good knowledge. And your clients at this time, they're looking for, they're probably trying to work, but they're also trying to stay current on their skills, and they can't ride their horses right now. So could they do a virtual clinic with professionals to approach how to approach courses? Can you approach professionals who are not working right now, who might really appreciate the opportunity to do a panel discussion or video lessons, that type of thing? Helen is going to talk next about some of the expanding on these ideas for coaching. But I wanted to bring a couple of ideas and different ways that you can apply this idea. A couple of people to check out online that might be of interest to you. There's some podcasts that are out there which are interesting. And so the Daily Strides person she's out of Ireland, and she does a podcast for virtual riding lessons. She does 30-day rider fitness challenges that are paid for. She does, and then the Equestrian and Performance and Fitness podcast. BZ Madden's putting out some great videos right now that are very interesting, and they have a lot of views if you follow her feed. So potentially there's things that you can bring value to, because your clients chose you for a reason, And I think the other thing is that your clients also can recognize that this is a really tough time for small businesses. And I think that they will, if you speak to them with authenticity, and you lead and try to provide value, they're going to see that and continue to stay with you. The other thing you might want to check out, this is a link to Top Riding podcast here. So there's about 30 of them. So you can definitely take a look at those. Podcasts are really easy to do. You don't really need anything other than your iPhone to be able to do it, and you can upload it to iTunes, or you can send it out as an audio recording to your clients if you so choose. If you're looking to upgrade to if you're trying to pivot but you don't know how to get online or how to do this stuff, this is all new to you. You're used to being in the barn riding and being a professional that way. Here's a couple that might be helpful to you. Zoom is free for 40 minutes. And it's unlimited for 2 participants. So if you wanted to do a one-on-one session on sports psychology or something like that, you could do that for unlimited time. Google Hangouts is free as well. Facebook Live is free. We've seen a lot of people popping up with Facebook groups that are paid for or membership based, or they've just created it for their barn to create some community during this time. And you can go live with that very, very easily. You just press the button and you just do it from your phone. Super easy. I'm currently using just my iPhone headphones, and that works really fairly well for audio. Instagram is also good, but it is public, so just be aware of that as opposed to Facebook. And then the other thing that you can do is also just shoot a video and then send it out via your phone. And then paid ones, I've put a couple prices here because I just looked them up this morning, and there's a couple of other ones, but Zoom, which is what we're on right now, is quite easy, and GoToMeeting is also pretty easy to use as well. There are tons of other ones, and that's not to say that these are the exhaustive list, but just to give you a couple of ideas. And I just wanted to share just a thought that I've had certainly with this outbreak is that I know that for all of us, I've seen some wonderful and just things that happen that have been just really great, and it really has made a big difference in everybody's day. You know, somebody dropping something off for you, or just doing kind things, as well as the wonderful things that have shown up in our horse community. We are leaders, and regardless of whether you realize it, if you have clients or you just have friends, you are an influencer. So if you're, this applies to social distancing. If you're doing things that are incorrect or morally wrong, you're not staying home, or you're breaking the rules, or you're, doing things that are not correct, you're influencing others to do those things too. And conversely, if you're doing the right thing and saying, yeah, our barn is doing this, come join us in this virtual whatever, you are a leader, and you are influencing people to do the right thing. And furthermore, I think that if you want to get scientific about this, we know that in looking at some of the market research, consumers, all of us, are making decisions right now after are doing good things and kind in customer loyalty. And I think that will probably be the case for the equine industry too. So remember just to lead by example, be kind and compassionate and empathetic, and connect with your clients and connect with your colleagues. We are all in this together, and I think that's if nothing else, that's a really important takeaway. So and it will probably change the horse world in really wonderful and amazing ways, and some bad ways too. But hopefully we can come out and see some positive things from it too. Okay, that's it for me, I think. I'm gonna get off my soapbox now.
Oh, Bettina, you're still on mute.
Thank you very much, Dr. Barham. That was super helpful, creative presentation about financial survival. and inspiring as well. I think we needed that at this point. Our last speaker for today is Helen Richardson, the Equestrian Canada Technical Programs Coordinator for Coaching and Education. And Helen's going to talk to us about fostering healthy relationships and continuing to connect with clients with equines and equestrian sport in a virtual environment. And I think Melanie did a great job of getting us thinking about that. So we'll go to Helen.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. I'm going to keep my video off because I live out in the boonies like most horse people. So I'm going to try to make sure you can hear what I'm saying. Thanks to everybody who's been speaking today about what we can do as farm owners and facility owners and those involved in our sport. I know this is an incredibly different time than any of us are used to, and there's a lot of change happening rapidly, and I'm hoping that we can all work together to find a way to get through this. I wanted to start by explaining or giving a bit of a definition of what a coach is to remind us of our role in our participants' lives. The term coach refers to all individuals who provide instruction to participants for the purpose of learning to ride or drive and improve their skills and performance level in equestrian activity. It's inclusive of individuals who identify themselves as coaches, instructors, or trainers. It's really anybody who's helping guide people through equestrian sport. And those of us have a vital role in the development of our sport participants and shape lives in the process. We know as coaches that the relationship we have with our athletes and our participants is a privileged one, plays a critical role not just in their sport development, but also their personal and athletic development and their growth as humans. And we need to remember that. And even though this is a very difficult time for us, we need to remember that relationship and start the things that we can do for ourselves and for our athletes and our participants. Coaches can be working on several things right now. They can be improving their own coaching skills. I hear from coaches a lot that they don't have time to do training because they're busy coaching. This is the time. So now we can all get online and start using as many pieces and tools out there as we can find to help ourselves become better coaches, so that when this is all over, we can all go back out there and be stronger and more capable coaches than we may have been last week or last year. I would encourage coaches to share ideas through social media. I am an eventing coach near Ottawa. I still coach actively, not right now, but I normally coach actively in the sport, evenings and weekends. And I posted on social media the other day looking for ideas for how coaches are moving things, how they're connecting with their students online, and have already received a bit of a flood of ideas. Everybody's starting to be a little more positive and think about things we can do. So share those ideas with other coaches, connect with your community and see if you can get good ideas from each other and work together and collaborate to do things for your students. There is lots of online education out there to improve our own skills as coaches. There's some free NCCP training that every coach can do. If you go to coach.ca, you can log in and do Making Headway in Sport. There's a nutrition module. There's modules for working with para-athletes. There's modules for initiating yourself as a coach in sport, figuring out what your role is and what your level of athlete is. If you've ever done any equestrian training, you probably need to do the Making Ethical Decisions evaluation online. We will be rolling out very shortly, and the plan was before this, we've been working on an EC campus, which would have several pieces of training for coaches online, and we're obviously ramping that plan up and working around the clock to try and get those pieces available for coaches in our community. There will be some concussion training coming. I know there have been lots of questions about the coach license. Obviously, right now, we don't have a show season. We don't know what show season looks like. So we're discussing all of that, and I'm sure more information will be coming soon. So keep firing your questions to us, but we're doing our best. If you're interested in getting certified, now's the time to start figuring out what pieces you can be doing. There are portfolio pieces that can be done online, that can be, you know, you gathering information together. We can go back to the barns, once we can go back into the community, we'll be able to finish those quickly. There are lots of online resources for equine theory. There's the University of Guelph online. There are universities around the world that have equestrian programs, University of Kentucky, Hartpury in the UK. So there's definitely a lot of opportunities to engage in online equine theory as well. I mentioned some. We're all seeing lots of Facebook posts for different equine theory classes that are available. You can be documenting your programs. You can be documenting what lessons were you teaching in the last 3 months, 6 months to prepare your athletes for competition. What are the training plans for your athletes, and how are you going to adjust those? It's critical right now that we all understand that we are not maintaining athletes for competition at this point. The focus has to be on keeping everybody healthy and everybody safe, and our sport is an amazing sport, but we need to be staying home and doing our part to be able to get back to competition quickly. So document your program so that when you do go back, you have a plan for how you're going to build conditioning again, how you're going to get those athletes moving again, get everybody back in the saddle and doing their piece. We can be maintaining our athlete and participant skills. A lot of us at every level have an integrated support team that we work with, and we may not technically call them that. It depends on the level you're at, but you probably know a physiologist, a physiotherapist, a strength trainer, a gym owner, a dance teacher, a stretch and strength person, gymnastic person, a yoga instructor who can connect with you and share ideas to provide an education at home program for your athletes, so they can be stretching, they can be doing the fundamental movement skills that are required in our sport, so they can be staying healthy. We can work with our mental health professionals. A lot of us have relationships with sport psychologists. They need things to do right now as well. They're happy to work with us to develop some sort of, you know, de-stress, focus, meditation techniques. Everybody's stressed and uncomfortable and unhappy, and they can help us provide those tools and set up a joint webinar for your athletes with those professionals. Work with a nutritionist to help your athletes understand what they can be eating, what they should be eating, how they should be working on their diet or changing their diet based on their level of activity. There's a lot of support people that we can be reaching out to and collaborating with, and you know, building a community. And coaches can be team building. We can engage our students in team building exercises over the internet. I've heard lots of places are starting to do rider level theory or horsemanship theory by Zoom or by FaceTime or by webinar. Rookie riders, anybody who started running a rookie riders program, there's a whole section of ground skills training exercises, which are skills on the mat, skills on the floor that get kids moving the right way to be able to ride. Do some yearly training planning. As I said before, plan for the return to sport and the conditioning that will have to happen, and the change to the calendars that will happen. And I know everything's fluid right now. We don't know when that's going to be, but having those ideas prepared so that we can do it and take care of everybody when they come back is important for us as well. Run a team meeting online. Just the chance to actually reach out and talk to their coach for 10 minutes. Sometimes we don't recognize as coaches because we're busy doing all of the other things. We don't recognize how important that is to some of our students. We've got students who maybe have confidence or special needs or different issues, and it's an opportunity for them to feel a little bit of normalcy for a few minutes and get back to that relationship that they valued during the week when they normally see you. As Melanie said, have a video watching horse movie party. recommend a horse book everybody can download from the library or from onto an e-reader, and have a book group. I played a great game of Trivial Pursuit with 4 or 5 people the other night over the phone, or over Zoom. One of our people had the Trivial Pursuit board out, and we all, she kept rolling the dice and reading the cards, and I'm sure she cheated a little, but that's okay. So you can, encourage people to play games and connect online. One of the things that our community, our farm, has started to do is we're a bit more of a performance facility, so some of the higher level athletes want to set up a team fitness challenge. So they're doing little videos of themselves doing 20 sit-ups, 30 push-ups, jumping jacks from home, that sort of thing. So they're keeping each other motivated. There is a group online called Hobby Horse Canada that started a hobby horse course building at your home, in your living room, in your front yard. Build with whatever materials you have and get kids running around and jumping things. It's kind of a fun, if you haven't seen it, encourage kids to look at it. Gets them thinking and creating. I heard about this one yesterday, a pony parade, posting a schoolie dry time. So people, if they are desperate to see a horse, and farm staff can either put horses in the field close to the road and post what time those horses will be there, so they can do a drive-by, not getting out of their car, not exposing anybody to anything, but just, still have that connection. A lot of places are doing school horse daily profiles and videos. We can all be researching. There's been a lot of coverage of this and talk today. Familiarize yourself with what your insurance provider will cover during this time. Check out what biosecurity protocols exist and what you should be doing if you happen to be the facility owner or on staff as well, and you're trying to care for the facility. There are some Government of Canada initiatives for small business and unemployment income recovery, so we can all be looking at that. And I know EC is working hard to make sure that the industry stays forefront in the government's mind, to make sure that there are resources for all of us to get through this. You can be updating your coaching emergency action plan or your facility emergency action plan. We've talked a bit today about that. Most certified coaches have to create an emergency action plan, but it also becomes one of those, well, I did it 20 years ago things. So make sure you have a look at that and put this sort of scenario in, and update your social media presence or your website. I know a lot of us create them when we first start and then never go back and spend the time to update those. So that's something we can be doing now as well. I wanted to leave everybody with a thought. As we all have unknown territory, we must remember that for our communities, sport provides participants with a unique opportunity for partnerships and relationships filled with passion, enthusiasm, unconditional acceptance and care between a horse and rider. For many of our students, that partnership is calming, invigorating, passionate, or magical. Equestrian coaches have an opportunity to be positive role models for members of their community at a very difficult time. Be strong, keep connecting, show your athletes that their equine friends are waiting for them to return, and reassure them that brighter days will come. Training will continue, and their passion can thrive until the day that sport resumes. We're in this together. Let us know what we need to help you keep being the coaches your athletes deserve. And I would encourage you to reach out and connect with your coaching community, with myself, understanding that the EC is working very hard. It may take a day or two to get back to you, but I get it. I'm one of you. This is incredibly difficult for all of us, and let's keep talking and find a way to do this so that we support our communities, so that we can all enjoy our sport afterwards. Thank you. That's it for me, Bettina.
Helen, thank you very much for that. Those were great suggestions about improving skills and about keeping busy while we're all doing our part, staying at home. So that's the end of our formal presentations today. I want to thank all of our speakers for taking the time to talk to us and educate us during a stressful and difficult time for everybody. And I want to thank Equestrian Canada for working so hard to keep the industry going, providing supports and helping us navigate through these difficult circumstances with our horses. And special thanks to Christy House, who's been working tirelessly on this.